يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Dear respected brothers and sisters, all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one true God who created us all. He is the omnipotent, He is omniscient, He is the creator and the giver of all things to man. The most important thing that you and I can discover in this life is the importance of thanking or being grateful to that one true God who created us all. It's a journey and it's a discovery process. But each and every one of us is compelled along the way to think everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed us and the meaning behind it. To reflect every message given to us. Nowadays we hear people who are Muslims who are fighting each other, who are killing each other. People of faith, the Abrahamic faith, killing each other. People who are of different religions, killing one another. When it boils down, what it boils down to is lack of thinking, lack of critical thinking. This deen instructs us over and over and over again to think. أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ أَفَلَا يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always reminds us, do you not think? Do you not contemplate? Do you not reflect on these messages that I give you? That's a sign for all of us. This deen begins with the word iqra, in which it means both the duality of reciting and reading. The two sources of knowledge that we are told, the first instruction that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us through the seal of all prophets is to read and recite. In other words, directing us towards education and learning and thinking before He even told us to worship. Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, the first commandment that Jibreel brought him was iqra. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. We know the whole, until the end of the ayah. That he was given as though, even though he was an illiterate person, who could not read or write. But he was burdened with that responsibility to seek knowledge. So now, what do we gain from that? That we become, number one, people who heed the message and reflect the message and think of the message in a critical way. Having said that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in so many times in the Quran reminds us of the important messages to come by swearing. Swearing on whom? On His creation. Because He is the omnipotent who created all of these things, and He is the one who has that prerogative to swear on these things. Many times when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or God swears, we have to heed that process. We have to pay attention because the message is very important. Well, in one particular surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears multiple times. Some scholars say 7 times because they are counting the ayat in which these swearing by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reflected. And ayat, for the non-Arabic speakers, are the verses in the Quran. So in other words, they count 7. Others say no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears 11 times before He tells us the important message to come. 11 times, think about that. In the context of the first commandment, which was to be reflective people, to be thinkers, to be analytical minds, and so forth and so on. But one thing that neither side of these scholars dispute is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or God, swears more times in that surah to tell us about that commandment or that instruction more than any other chapter in the Quran. There is no other surah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swore that many times to tell us about this important message. So the question is, what is that important message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us? Because after all, if we're critical thinkers, if we're making tadabbur as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed us in the Quran, then we really have to take seriously, not because we like one ayah better than the other, but we have to really pay attention to the one that's the most important, that deals with ultimate goal of the human being, which is to attain success. Everything that we do it to attain success. Even when people are transgressing against others, they do it because they want to gain something. In other words, some sort of success. It's an illegitimate form of success, but nevertheless an attainment of some sort of success. So in this case, Allah tells us the most important, swears so many times to tell us how to attain the highest level of the success that you and I are looking for. The highest level. He tells us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the sun and its glorious splendor, by the moon as it follows it, by the day as it reveals it, and by the night as it conceals it. And by the heavens, and that which has erected it firmly, and by the earth, and that which has expanded, and by the life or the soul, and that which has given it its capacity and guided it, and also taught it right from wrong. He succeeds, whoever purifies that soul. And he fails miserably, the one who corrupts that soul. This is in the chapters of the sun, Ash-Shams. We all know this. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها. Think about it. We're busy killing one another because we want to attain success. And here is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing to us how to attain that highest level of success. Just purify your own soul. That's the command. Don't worry about anything else. You will attain that success. Take care of your own. And this is an instruction directed to the person, to the human being. Now the question is, what happens when a person purifies his soul? See, we became an ummah that's so divided, and some of these points were mentioned earlier, that are focused in the tribalistic mentality, even among the religious people. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Even among the religious people, where the masajids itself, not because people frequent it, because their understanding of the religion becomes their tribe. They moved away from the clanism into sectarianism, which kind of thinks in the same way. My understanding is better than you. And that's the mentality that kills, that destroys, that hurts one another. And that's the one that's burning our society back home today. It has taken a different shape. Sectarian strife. The worst kind. When the masses get so confused, because at least in the tribal sense they can identify with regions or with the tribe or this. In this case, most of them are puzzled as to what's going on. How do you kill someone who says, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah? How do you do that? You can have a different understanding of things. You can debate these issues. And yes, debate in religion, it's allowed. That's why we have madahibs. People did not understand. And there are, how do you say, there is an ethic of disagreement. We can disagree on things, but there is a guideline to that, respecting one another. But anytime you see a person who stands before people and looks at another human being because he understood the religion in one way or another and declares him as a non-Muslim, you should exercise what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you when He was talking about all of these ayat that we mentioned in the beginning, and become that reflector, that critical thinker, that person that stands and asks the right question. On what basis do you do that? On what basis? And who assigned you to that? When Rasulullah alayhi salatu, the Prophet that was sent with this message, is told deliberately, and this is the person that you and I and everybody who disagrees with us will agree on this issue, that he was the best character known to mankind. Not because I'm a Muslim. Because a man whose life is covered from A to Z, and there are volumes and volumes of reports and a hadith that talks about his life. Could we please scoot a little bit forward, please? Yeah. Brothers, so we would have room in the back. Our sisters will. His life is covered in volumes and volumes of material that's available for examination. Every aspect of his life. And compare that to any other human being, any hero that we have, whether in this country or elsewhere, and just compare it. Any objective mind would come up and understand when we say the best character ever lived. When you compare him to every other being out there. Now, his instruction, the instruction given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was, فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ. Just remind them, and that's all you're assigned. Remind them. And then the ayah continues, لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِمُصَيْطِرٍ. He is reminded that you're not, those people that we send you to remind them, you're not an oppressor among them. You cannot force things on them. This is the commandment given to the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine now the person or persons who put themselves in charge, running around, telling people, dictating to people, telling them, do this or else you're that, and here is the result. Who put them in charge? Who? This is not what the religion teaches. If the Prophet ﷺ is given that deliberate command, by whom? By his Creator. The same Creator who sent the message. Do we know better than him? Of course not. But sadly, we have people that are thinking in that mentality. Now, do we blame them and blame them only? Of course not. Because we're responsible. We're responsible in our profound ignorance about our religion and what it teaches. And our resistance to engage people in a corrective way. In a way that you and I are going to be responsible of in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala one day. That we will be asked, what have you done? In your level of understanding, what have you done? And then I don't know what you and I would be saying. This deen and this ummah indeed is a middle ground. Ummah al-wasat. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes us, middle ground. And Rasulullah alayhi salatu also emphasized that point. خَيْرُ الْأُمُورِ أَوْسَطًا. The best of all affairs and matters are the middle ground, the one in the middle. Not in the extreme, not to the left, not to the right, but the one in the middle. And that's what we are instructed to do. Now, how do we take that responsibility and bring ourselves and those who are experiencing all of these miseries back home to the middle. Of course, by starting that debate. That's your responsibility and my responsibility. And if we don't do that, wallahi, as I am certain one day I will be standing in front of my Creator and having to answer this question, each one of us will. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Let's turn our hearts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكيها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك قريب سميع مجيب الدعوات يا رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة.